I'm honored today to be joined by Ahmed Rajab in beautiful Kuwait. Ahmed has had a stellar career in some of the most recognized brand names in Kuwait, in HR leadership, in everything from engineering companies such as ASICO, Kuwait, UTC, telecom, including Virgin and Ooredoo, education with Gust, and banking with Bubian and NBK. So it really is the roster of some of the top employers. And I'm super excited to learn both about your career journey, also about the specifics of the Kuwait market and how it applies to talent, in the hope that we can hopefully benefit a lot of people as they're figuring out their careers, particularly here in Kuwait. And as a starting point, Ahmed, I'd love to start with what I'm beginning to see is a bit of a common theme, which is you are an engineer who is also a leader in HR. And I'd love to understand a bit about how did that transition happen? And then what's qualifying all these amazing engineers to become super amazing HR leaders?
Ooh. Well, first of all, thank you. The honor is mine to be here with you today, Rabea. It's a pleasure, and I hope I can add value to our audience through this
I'm
podcast.
sure you will. Thank you.
To answer this question, engineering to HR, um, as a normal guy or graduate, was searching for passion, searching for a career path. I became an engineer, of course, and it wasn't a choice, to be honest. It was, typically speaking, family is pushing toward. Remember, in the old days, they say you either a doctor or an engineer
Yeah. Or lawyer.
or a lawyer. Yes, exactly. They don't even look at other
Yeah.
professions, and I was among them. So I was kind of found my way to engineering. Once I graduated, I was blessed with a good job at Equid Petrochemical
And you did your engineering in the US.
in the US. Yes.
So tell me a bit about that too, because again, Kuwait has always been blessed with great universities, great education. You yourself also worked in a Kuwaiti educational institution at some point.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about the choice to go to the US and whether in today's world that's still a good choice. Because the world has
Ooh.
obviously changed a lot.
Oh, it's tricky. Well, let me tell you, US today is not the US I lived in
For sure.
25 years ago. When I made the choice to go to US back in 97, it was attractive. It was an opportunity not only for to get a quality education, but also to be an independent man, find ways of living, encounter difficulties, go through a journey in life, and come back ready to face challenges in life. And that is the message that we used to speak about and we used to aim for.
Yeah.
Did that happen? Yes, it did. It was challenging, of course, to live abroad without. I remember one of the challenges we used to face when I wanted to call my family back then. I used to go to the grocery store, get a card where I have to scratch it, and then go outside to the payphone, pick up the phone, and call my family, and I have to scream because I was under the impression that they couldn't hear me well, and the voice was.
And then the call had to end before the credits
And
ended.
the call had to end before the credit, exactly. This is just one of the challenges we used to face back then. I think going through these challenges, it made our generation solid.
Yeah.
It made our generation resilient and able to cope through, challenges that would face you later on in the life. So it happened. Once I graduated as an engineer, came back to Kuwait, blessed with an opportunity at Equid Petrochemical, and I didn't know what HR meant back then.
Yeah.
Zero knowledge of HR. I got exposed gradually to human resources. They found me, Ahmed, I think you're doing good in training. Why didn't you start training people around in the plant?
And that's your initial exposure. So as an engineer, you got some projects in the HR realm, in training in particular.
They trained me to do certain human. I don't like the word, by the way, soft skill.
Yeah.
I think they are actually hard skills, not soft skills.
Yeah.
I tend to say always human, but really,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that's a
the
great
technical skills are for me is easy to learn. The soft skills where you communicate with people, those are the harder skills to
sure.
learn. So I always refer to them as human skills. So
And sorry, I apologize. I have a bad habit
no
of cutting,
problem.
but
No, no, no. Feel free, please.
where did you feel you picked up these hard human skills? Is this family or is this a Kuwaiti schooling system? Because if I remember, you went to government schools
Yes, government schools, yes.
and where their focus was primarily on the technical skills, not the hard human skills, at least I remember in my generation. So
Absolutely.
was this what you learned bilharat, or was it what came to you naturally, or how do you pick up those skills?
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
It's all of the above, Rabi.
Yeah.
It's I can't really pinpoint on an incident or a condition or a place where I picked up those skills.
Yeah.
It happened incrementally through my life. And I remember I was in al broadcast, when I was in high school.
Amazing.
And I think it grew from there. It started from there. I used to حي العلم
Oh, mashallah.
also, yes, يعني, do the flag thing. So it grew with me until I got the job at Equate, which was, by the way, my first official job. I did internship back in the States.
Yeah. With US firms, nothing related
A
to Kuwait.
US firm, nothing related to Kuwait, yes. And then I was hired for 6 months after I graduated. And then I decided, of course, to come to Kuwait. So anyways, um, those human hard skills, I think, is a mix of acquired during the life and also you were born with.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of both. So they saw me, they spotted that I'm good in training. Why didn't you start training the plants around? And I did that. And then, Ahmed, why didn't you start interviewing on behalf of maintenance? And I got certification of doing a behavioral interview back in 2004. I still remember the date. And I'm still proud of that training, by the way, still uh, in my memory. And I started interviewing. And then shortly after, I started doing job descriptions for my team. So wait a minute, guys. At some point of time, I was doing more HR work than my engineering job. So I think I decided to make the switch back in 2006. I felt HR close to heart, HR where the passion is, HR where I want to have a career path. And I made the switch in 2006. And as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, I've been through multiple sectors, multiple industries, but in human resources.
Yeah. And once you got into human resources, you never looked back. You never went back to the engineering.
No, I don't regret, despite the community pressure and the community question mark.
Yeah.
Because Ahmed, we saw you as an engineer growing in that field, and out of the sudden, switch to HR. And let's face it, Rabi, human resources doesn't elevate to the level of engineering in some perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay, in some people perspectives, they don't see HR as a same level as engineering. So for them, it's a drop down.
And so
I
there's
had
a
this
societal pressure there.
societal pressure there, yes. Despite that, I think, guys, I want to follow my passion. And that would be an advice to the young generations here. Find a passion, because if you find your passion, you can be happy and you can excel and you can grow. If you don't find your passion, wallahi, you will not produce. You will not be happy in your job.
Sure.
And I was blessed with that. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the credit goes to me, or it's just, I did not say no when the opportunity came.
And when you think about your journey in finding your passion, because I see people of all ages, even people who are of my age, who still are wondering what their passion is.
I know, it's sad. It's sad that you spent all your career, don't have a passion what you do, and I don't know, you end up retiring, and what did I do? Where did the time go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, what was that journey of deciding that this is it for me? I mean, was there a light bulb moment, or you just got good at it and then you enjoyed your day to day?
Yes, I got good at it. I'm a people's person by nature, and I find satisfaction in dealing with people. And I think, yes, HR is all about empathy and dealing with people.
Yeah.
And you know, today, by the way, Rabi, and I'm sure you know that, 85% of the success is your ability to deal with people. 15% only is your technical experience, your degree, your name, your wasta, your whatever it is. It's all 15%, and 85% of the financial success is due to your ability to communicate.
Yeah. And again, let's say you're a great engineer, but you have challenges communicating, and so much of success today is about communication. What are the ways a person can work on that and evolve that? How much of that is again, natural.
Can be trained.
And yeah, can be trained. And how can it be trained? Because oftentimes people will say, oh, everything can be trained. And then the question is, okay, listen, I'm shy, I'm an introvert. I'm an engineer because in general, I like to be behind the computer. I don't necessarily like to be behind that many human beings, but I realize it's important for my career success. How
Well,
do I build
Rabea,
it?
I think the key is the willing. The key is the willing. If there is a will, there is a way. If you if you're if you like to wake up late every day, and out of the sudden all your career evolves about waking up early, and if you realize that, and you realize that you have to wake up early, otherwise you will go backward.
Yeah.
Then I have to change my behavior. So the key is the willing. The key is to be, to have this as a target and work hard to achieve your target. Then, and I'm sure you've met so many people that are, for example, introvert, but they speak really well and they present really well. You've met a lot of people that are introvert, but maybe they like going to parties and they like to enjoy, socializing with others because they're trained how to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, hats up for them. It's more difficult for them than an extrovert, but they're making it because the willing is there.
Sure.
So I think the willing is the key here.
Yeah. And I imagine that being willing to also take feedback and to be coached is also important too.
Absolutely, yes.
Sometimes you're willing, but you have no idea what your blind spots are or how to actually tackle those blind spots.
And that's 50-50. 50% on the individual, and now as a corporate, I think of an employee, for example, and 50% on the organization. Because good organizations today can realize or spot that they have talented people in their organization that require coaching and mentoring. So they have to provide the platform and the mean and the environment for exchanging knowledge through coaching, mentoring, whatever. So 50% on the employee, but 50% in the organization.
So here you are, you spent a lot of time and effort and probably did very well to get into engineering. You got an engineering degree. You joined a great company and found yourself in something better than engineering, at least for
me, yes,
for your needs, alhamdulillah. And then, over your career, as we've said, you managed to change industries a few times. To what extent, again, you mentioned that was what was transferable in your skill set was you're a great communicator, people person, so that let you go from being an engineer to
human
HR.
resources.
There was a time, I remember, when most people wanted to be in a single job in a single industry all their lives, and they were scared to change industries. But you've obviously overcome that fear and done really well doing that. Tell me a bit about that. So as you were transitioning industries, what was going on in your head? And
Yeah, and the answer is easier a bit because despite the fact that I'm changing industry, HR remains the same.
Yeah.
So it's like a joker. The joker can be played in many different ways. So the fear of changing industry normally associated with learning new skills, and maybe your skills are not valuable anymore and will not add value in your new job, and that's where the fear is. But in my case, since HR is a skill that can be applicable in every business, irrespective of the industry, then maybe the fear is minimized here because actually the fear is diverted in knowing the business rather than utilizing my skills because I know what I have, I know what I'm going to do, and I know where the gap is, I know what's my mandate, but maybe the challenge is learning the business this time, not the skills.
And are the type of people you search for and the way you search for them and pick them for every industry different? So in other words, will I have a totally different interviewing process for an NBK than I would for a Virgin Mobile? And is how I think about who I hire very different? I know there's the hard skill part, but
Yes.
We're talking about the hard soft skills.
The hard soft skills, yes, exactly. The human skills, yes.
Do the same interview questions sort of follow you because they're great at assessing who that human being is, or do you have to come up with a totally different set per industry?
Wallahi, Rabi, the behavior interview remains the same.
It does remain the same.
Does remain the same. However, you need to understand the norms and the values, the corporate values that you have. And once you live those values and understand them, then you shape the interview based on the norms and values. I'll give you an example. Integrity in the bank is very highly respected.
Yeah.
It's not to be compromised, not to be touched. Integrity is. So by default, when I conduct an interview, I have to focus on integrity. So my questions will be tailor-made toward finding if the person likes to take shortcuts or does not respect processes or
Just,
or does not comply. And this is for me is a red line. The moment I sense that this person does not really have high integrity. On the contrary, if I'm in the construction business right now, integrity is still high, but not as high as in the bank. So maybe the questions are directed toward another value, not integrity.
okay. Are there magic questions that you felt have served you well as you move from place to place? So, for example, I met one person who's senior in HR who said, listen, my magical question is, I would say, how would your previous boss describe you when I call him for a reference check? And that person claimed that that was by far the best question you ask someone, because you really uncover how they think about themselves and their prior employers, etc. You know, have there been questions that, or particular flows of questions that have served you well across those industries?
Well, yeah, I start with understanding the SWOT, what are the strengths and weaknesses. But instead of using the word weaknesses, I always encourage people to speak up, because if I tell you what's your weaknesses, many people hesitate to answer and try to run away from answering the question.
And you, or else use a really bad answer like, I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah, exactly.
Which they read in a bad book somewhere. They repeat
Exactly,
100
yes.
times.
Yes, or a copy paste answer.
Yeah.
So I tend to, the magic question is, I tend to find a constructive way of getting the answer from the candidate, whether he likes it or not. But I try to pull the answer from him through constructive questions. How can you do this? Any area for improvement? Any room for improvement? These kind of positive questions rather than weaknesses and negative questions. And I think those have served me through my career.
That's great. Obviously, as you've transitioned jobs, you've also been interviewed
Oh, yeah.
a bunch of different
Tell
times.
me about it.
I'd love to hear a bit about how you prepare for that experience, because for your average person, entering an interview can be a pretty nerve-wracking experience. And in a lot of cases, particularly in our part of the world, I find that people are not very well prepared.
Not very well prepared. They don't take it seriously because of the social connection we have. They don't really give. They don't think that the interview will matter.
Yeah.
They think that, oh no, it's okay. I have another way of getting the job. The interview is only a tick mark. It's not really essential for selection. But to their surprise, it is essential for selection, because, if you're working for a prestigious company, no, an interview, Habibi, is a critical here. You have to pass it. I think it's about time. I think we are changing the environment here, Rabea. I mean, this is a responsibility on us as an HR community. In every opportunity we go, in every seminar, in every career fair, in every interview, we talk about how important the interview is. And we talk about how to prepare for the interview. And I think I've seen changes now.
Yeah.
I taught human resources in the university, as you mentioned earlier, in Gust for 4 years, almost 4 years.
It's amazing.
Through COVID. So I started face to face, and then remotely online, and then hybrid, and then back to face to face. So it was
The whole experience.
it was an experience, really. It was a memorable experience how the teaching was transitioned. And I always find ways, given my experience, technical experience and field, because I'm not pure academic person, and I'm from the field.
You're bridging the industry and
I'm
academia.
bridging the industry, Rabi, exactly. So I always try to emphasize on the importance of being prepared for an interview, and we've seen changes now. Now that we're interviewing people, I've seen they come dressed up. They know how to get in. They expect certain questions. They come up with questions, and I like that.
Yeah.
Some people, they come up with questions, and so I've seen changes in the environment.
Tell me about your routine. So tomorrow, you get called by a top-notch employer and they've seen you speak and they're awed by you and they say, we'd love to have a chat with you. What do you typically do in that process?
But
If
things have evolved, Rabea.
yeah,
Well, I'm 47 years old. I'm not
sure.
27 years old anymore. Okay. So when I was in the 20s, I would do something. When I'm
Yeah.
in 30s and 40s, and depends, of course, on the
Give us the
position.
20s and give us the 40s because
Oh,
they're obviously we'll skip the 30s, but I'd be interested to see the start
okay.
point and the sort of the end point in terms of how you look at that.
In the 20s, I will read my CV. I'll make sure that it's reflection of myself. Oh, and why not changing the CV, by the way, based on the job? I've seen that, and it's acceptable because some keywords here can be tailor made. I'm not saying that you don't tell the truth. Of course, you have to. This is a given. But choosing the keywords that are important for the industry or for the position that you're applying for. So why not revamping the CV, for example, making sure it's readable, making sure it's applicable, and then also practice, practice, maybe with family, maybe with close friends. Show up on time, not too early, not too late. Too early is not good. Too late is not good because you tend to be nervous to the meeting, to the interview. Not too early, even if you show up too early, they say, "Why are you here?" It shows that also overcommitment. So show up within 10 to 15 minutes, not less, not more. Make sure, and if they ask you to drink cup of coffee or tea or water, yes, please accept. It shows that you're comfortable. Start by listening a lot and don't interrupt. Only answer the question that you're asked. And then end with questions. If you have any questions, you can also ask questions.
And those questions you typically prepare for before.
Of course, of course. Go to the website, see what they have, understand the job, and then ask about the job.
Yeah.
Don't ask about the salary. Don't ask about how much I'm getting paid. Don't ask about working hours. It shows that your agenda is different.
Right.
You don't want to get the job, you just want to get paid. This will come later.
Sure.
If they call you for a second interview, the salary and the working hours and all these things will come later. In the 40s, things are different. I mean, it's because I grew. So it starts with a cup of tea. It's an invitation.
Yeah.
I'll tell you an example. Once I received a call. I didn't accept the job, by the way, but I'll tell you, I was really flattered by the call. I received a call from someone. He said, "Hi, Ahmed, how are you? Is everything fine? My name is blah, 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 and I work for blah, blah, blah." Okay. And I would like you to visit me in my office to show me how I can structure my team better. To show me how I will show you the org structure in human resources, and I want your opinion on how to structure the team better.
Interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, I couldn't say no. So I went.
Why couldn't you say no? But was it because the company was great, the person was great, or you felt that the problem itself was too interesting to
No,
pass up?
because I felt that I am required to help.
Yeah.
Because they
So
wanted my
someone
help.
you knew before?
No,
No.
I didn't know. I knew of him, but I didn't know him.
So it was a sort of cold call, but the person was reputable and the company was reputable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I went and looked at the structure, and we had an amazing talk. And we drank a cup of tea.
Amazing.
And we had a lovely evening. It was in the evening time. And then he offered me a job. So see how things grew.
Yeah.
It's really nice. So this is one of it didn't work out, but the beginning was really beautiful. So in the 40s, basically, things are different. Starts with socializing, sometimes lunch, sometimes coffee, sometimes meeting outside somewhere, and then it evolves. Sometimes presentation, and then it evolves.
Yeah. But do you prep at all for interviews? Do you do the same? Let me practice with my friends for my family for
No,
the interview.
not anymore. Not anymore.
But you still do research the companies beforehand.
course.
Yeah. And so
Of
that
course.
preparation remains important at whatever stage of your career.
It changes,
Yeah.
but yes, it remains important, of course. Because again, you don't want to stumble across information that are not relevant, or maybe they ask a question that you don't know how to answer. It's not nice at your level. So you should, yes, get prepared.
Yeah, I actually feel that the more senior you are, the more preparation you have to do. You know, the
And
expectations.
not the same preparation, but yes, of
Yeah.
course.
The questions, it almost feels like the more senior the person is, the more that person has to interview the employer at some point and not just be interviewed by him.
Yeah, correct. But keep in mind, Rabi, if you receive a call when you're in the 40s or when you're in a high ranking, they've already done the research.
Yeah.
They already know you. They're hiring you for your reputation. They're not going to ask typical questions. What would you do? Or they know what would you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So keep in mind, it all comes down to how accepting how I mean, if you can accept to be part of this organization, and the question is around that. We're not gonna check your career because we know your career already. Yeah.
And so let's talk a bit about job transitions, and in particular, when is the right time to move? And is that part of a bigger plan for oneself? Is it sort of, this is my life's trajectory, and then you try and fit in the pieces? Or is it a lot more opportunistic where, so and so, as you said, calls me up, it's a great company, it's a great project, let me move on that. So and I'd love you to personalize that to your experience, because obviously
Sure.
everyone's different. I still meet people. I have a very, very close friend who's been with the same company ever since he graduated. In fact, another very close friend who's as old as I am has been the same company since he graduated, and he just got fired, which is also
Ooh.
very difficult, because this was a person who thought he would be his entire
Yeah,
working
exactly. He
life in
retires there.
a company.
Exactly.
And then obviously I've seen people with much shorter tenures who've also had super amazing success. And so it's interesting to just hear about
I see.
how you personalize that yourself, and as an example for others who don't know if they should still be in the same industry and company, or they should be looking for other opportunities.
There are so many variables to answer your question, Rabi. But well, first of all, let's talk about the timeline. There is no ideal timeline. People say sometimes 4 to 5 years, but it's subjective and it depends on the person. And my answer to that part is that if you're saturated, if you reach a level in your job where you know all the dimensions of your job, you know everything that can happen within your job. If you know your scope very well, if you start transferring knowledge to others, but yet you're not being recognized and you don't get promoted, then it's time for you to leave.
Okay.
So
So the learning has flattened out,
exactly,
and the recognition is not there, and so you're not in the right place anymore.
Exactly. Then this is the time. Some people say 4 to 5 years, but it's not really time-based. It's more if you reach your full potentiality, and then if you don't get recognized and move on in your career and career path, then maybe it's a time for you to move on.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And also another variable here is the generation. In the old days, back in maybe my father's time, your father's time, it used to be a job for life.
Yeah.
Once you join, you expect to retire within that job. So it's about expectation as well. In today's generation, no.
Yeah.
They move on, and they're expecting to stay for 2 to 3 years and then move on to something else.
But
So the generation does play a key
for you
part.
personally, were you prioritizing learning throughout, or was it recognition, or was it pay, or has it changed over time? Because I know generally when people start off in our part of the world,
How much is the salary?
salary matters a lot. Brand name, because parental pressure matters a lot. Because when you tell a parent, I'm going to NBK, even if it's a lower salary than Rabea startup,
Exactly.
they prefer NBK because it's a brand. Yeah,
It's a brand. Yes.
So
and the whole family is happy. By the way, the mother is happy, the father is happy. My son works in NBK. My son, the whole family is happy. Exactly.
If you're a Rabea startup, you're in trouble. No one wants to speak about it.
She will not speak. The mother will not speak in her social events. It could be better, but that's social pressure again. Well, the pay, I always say, but we don't realize that in the early age. We focus on the pay in early age. We focus on, my friend got a job for 50 KD more. That's a better job. And that's a mindset in the entry-level jobs.
Yeah.
But then when you move on, my advice is the money will follow.
Yeah.
Focus on the career. Focus on your job. And trust me, the money will follow. Don't focus on getting just 10%, 20% raise. Focus on your job, work, and then the money will always follow.
Yeah. And so let's talk now, because I know a lot of people who call me up, friends of mine in their 40s and their 50s sometimes, and they say, listen,
Looking for jobs?
I've done this for 20 some years. I now know I don't want to do this again. And in many cases, they want to change. They might have been bankers for 20 years and they suddenly wake up and decide, I don't like the industry. I don't like the job. I want
Ooh,
a,
but
a
late.
transition. So it's late. And so, when you think about your planning for your career and what advice you give to others, is it now that you're in HR, you're always going to be in HR, and then you're trying to maximize? I mean, what do you maximize for now at this age? Are you maximizing for longevity, or are you maximizing for learning, or are you maximizing for pay or recognition? How do you think of that mix?
Well, to answer that, first of all, it's better late than never.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're really, it's better late than never.
And I've seen some amazing transitions, by the way, even in late 40s and 50s, where people, and it's always amazed me that they've landed so well. But like you said, their hard human skills are so great that they were able to do it.
Yes. I mean, I wonder why that person couldn't find his passion early in his career. It would have been a lot better and a lot easier. But I mean, again, it's better late than never. If you find your passion, no matter in which level you're in or what your age is, then follow your passion. At least you can retire happy. You don't retire that and you regret, where did the time go and how you spent my life. See, every person is driven by something.
Yeah.
Some people are driven by recognition, whether it's tangible or intangible, whether it's monetary or non-monetary. And some people are driven by social pressure. Some people are driven by achievements. So it depends on the person, Rabi.
Sure. Every human journey is
different.
You have to listen to your inner voice, I guess, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. So it depends on what you want, really. Many people are driven by recognition. So I need to be recognized for what I do. And if I don't find this in this job, no, then I'm in the wrong job. I want to find a job where I'm recognized. And it depends on what kind of recognition. Could be monetary, non-monetary. Yes, it depends.
You're also, obviously, you're Kuwaiti. You've worked in the Kuwaiti private sector for many years now.
Pure private sector.
And you've had great success in it. You and I were at a conference earlier today, and one of the challenges that's always spoken about in Kuwait is about getting more Kuwaitis into the private sector. A lot of Kuwaitis are still in the government. A lot of young graduates still prefer to be in the government. I guess tell me a bit about what attracted you personally to the private sector instead of following in other people's footsteps, and then what would you say to other young Kuwaitis who are graduating now about that choice? Because, there are obviously people who went to the government sector and had great success, and there are people who are in the private sector who did.
And had great success.
And had great success too. So I'd love to hear about your personal choice, and then what you tell the younger version of you if he was graduating right now.
Very sensitive question. And I'll tell you about my personal experience. But before I do that, I'll tell you about where do we stand today in Kuwait in terms of government versus private. We receive almost 30,000 graduates every year in Kuwait. This is a sum of universities, diploma, all. 83% of them choose to go to the government, and only 17 choose to go to the private sector. And private sector now has two parts, whether you work for organization or you make your own business.
Yeah. And what would you say the split of the 17% is between entrepreneurship?
I'm not sure, but let's say half and half, hypothetically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe less than half for doing own business.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, the government initiated a very nice program called KNF, Kuwait National Fund. They can support you in your business idea up to 400,000 KD.
Which is a lot of money.
Which is a lot of money, yes.
So $1.2 million.
Yes, and it's good. Subject to having, of course, a good feasibility study, financial, marketing, technical, and they can support you up to 400,000. So it drove kind of the percentage toward them initially, but then COVID hit. And then the percentage kind of flipped back to the government.
And is that because the program stopped, or just people couldn't start entrepreneurial ventures? Did the government withdraw that program?
They couldn't start the entrepreneurial ventures. And also, it wasn't managed well.
Yeah.
And people who failed to pay back their debt, um, it wasn't managed well in terms of the co-funding, how much we pay, what's your expenses, and all these things. So it phased out with time. So the percentage is now back to government and other organizations. Having said that, the compass is wrong here. And if the government, back to the early session we've had this morning, back to the vision of Kuwait in 2035, if you want to support the private sector, then the percentages here should flip.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be 83% and 17% for the private sector.
And one of the speakers did this beautiful distinction of
Amazing.
saying that, a lot of those 83% aren't working in government, they're living in government, because in a lot of cases they might not be working a lot, but,
exactly.
but they go there every day and it's their livelihood. Yeah.
There is a saying العربي القناعة المبطلة.
Yeah.
آسف البطالة المقنعة. البطالة if you can. بطالة مقنعة.
Yeah.
We're doing something wrong here in terms of the percentages. So we should focus more on incentivize, support the people who go to the private sector. Now, the people...
And is it that the salaries of the public sector are so much better than the private? What is it within the government sector that would be attractive to a new...
Couple of things. Salary, at some point of time, I feel like sometimes there is a battle between government and private, who pays more. Initially, when the private sector introduced دعم العمالة, they were, they way up in terms of their salaries. And then the government raised their salaries so they don't feel left out. They introduced kawadir, allowances. There is a salary. Then the private sector raises their salaries again. And it's the battle who pays more. And that's why the compass always toward the government, driven by higher salary, relatively higher salary, shorter working hours, less responsibility,
and inability to fire someone, I imagine.
I was about to say that. The illusion of safety, the illusion of job security, it's a job, yes, you cannot fire, but that comes with lots of, consequences if you cannot fire someone.
Sure.
The behavior changes, the productivity changes, the expectation changes, everything comes with the sense of security that no one can touch you.
Yeah.
So these things, people tend to go to the government more. Now, the problem is also has a social problem. Why there is a social problem? Because now you have the remaining of the day is free. So if you don't utilize these hours in something good, then what you will end up doing? You will end up doing something not good, something bad. And then you have another kind of problems, which is the social problem, sociological problems. Crimes, drugs, whatever.
Which the government also ends up having to pay for in
Exactly.
terms of trying to help those.
Exactly. So you're not only not having productive employee, and now you have also other problems that happens after working hours. The private sector is rewarding, despite the fact that there's a misconception about the private sector being no job security.
Yeah.
And it's not true. But let me tell you something. For the people who don't work, no, they shouldn't stay. The people who don't produce, of course they shouldn't stay. Would you allow someone to work in your company who is not producing? Of course not. But for the people who work, of course they'll stay. Of course they'll excel. Of course they'll be recognized. And that's a misconception outside. And that's my message to the graduates. Guys, if you really want to work, private sector is of course better for you. At least you will get recognized, you will learn, you will develop your skills. Look at the private sector's employees today who's in mid-management, mid-level today. They're intellectually great people. You can spot them among the government sector employees, with all due respect to the other employees.
And over time, I imagine they end up being paid a lot more if they're successful.
Of course. There's no ceiling.
Yeah.
In the government, there is ceiling.
Sure.
Yes. But the graduates, they don't say that from day one.
Yeah.
They look at, there is 50 KD more here, another 50 KD more here.
And so for you, again, if I go back to the personal journey, and given all the advantages you talked about from a public sector, which was perceived security, potentially better pay, shorter working hours, and the list went on. It seemed like a sure bet that with all these incentives, you'd end up in a government job. Why did you not end up in a government job?
Well, I'm not a typical Kuwaiti. I'm not a typical Kuwaiti, I
If
think.
you think back to that
I wear a
time,
suit.
if you think back to that time, what were you thinking? Were you thinking, I don't want to be typical, or I've got higher aspirations for myself, or what was the driver to take the uncommon path? Because, there's a lot of drivers to take the common path. So,
Yeah, to be honest, Rabea, I don't know, but I was lucky.
yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, I don't know. It just happened that I came back from the States. I was blessed with an opportunity at Equate Petrochemical, and then the spark went on and on. I mean,
Yeah,
I never saw myself in the government after Equate.
yeah.
I always saw myself in the private sector. Yeah.
And again, so for young Kuwaitis, if I'm speaking to you going off, whether to university here in either Kuwait University or one of the many private universities
Yeah.
now, going off the United States, and there's someone you care about, what would you tell them? Would you say, don't even look at the government jobs? Okay, so walk away from the government jobs.
Underline that. Underline that. Yes, of course.
And then if from the private sector, the choices tend to be work for the large institutions, which in many cases have almost become like government. Like some of the brands we mentioned are really, they're huge and successful, and but they're massive. Then there's the startup entrepreneurial ones you talked about, where you can join someone else's entrepreneurial journey. And then obviously the third path, which you also seem to have mentioned, is start your own entrepreneurial path, which seems to be also encouraged. Looking back, and again, if you were to start the journey again, would you start at an Kuwait, or would you say, you know what, I'm 21 years old, I would build my own business?
I see. Well, we didn't have back then. We didn't have the support, the government support that the people have today, that the young students have today. But anyway, I would say, if you're a fresh graduate and you want to start your career, and if you have the luxury of choice, which might not happen, by the way, if you have the luxury of choice, focus on organizations that are big, huge. Why? Not only not only because they provide safety for you, and they're not going to be bankrupt, so they lay you off. No, but because you will learn.
Yeah.
You will learn, and then of course after a couple of years, then you have the right tools to make your own business. If you choose to make your own business from day one, do you have the right tools really to make your own business, to manage your own business, to manage your people? No. So go to organizations, brands, big brands in Kuwait, because you will know what a manager is, what the colleagues, what's the expectation, what's the norms, what's the values, deadlines, objectives, and all these. You will learn them in a good, reputable organization. And then after a couple of years, you can leverage your skills elsewhere.
Yeah. I interview for people applying to the university I graduated from, and it's a selective university. I interviewed someone just before COVID, and super genius, got into the university, but then calls me up a few months later and says, even though I got accepted, my friend and I have decided to defer our acceptance in order to start something entrepreneurial. And, I thought so the university got accepted to Stanford University, and, he's looking at starting a startup that wasn't even going to be in Dubai based, where he was born and raised. It was going to be another country.
Okay.
And I supported them in any way I can, but I kept on thinking, is it the right choice? Anyway, within 2 years, the business that he started is now worth several billion dollars.
Oh, whoa.
So
he made the right choice then.
So I still wonder. So this is always what's interesting about life, which is he obviously has had a lot of success very early on. That success is on paper, right? You don't, even though it's worth billions of dollars, it doesn't mean you've cashed out the billions of dollars.
Correct.
And then when you get used to that, without having gone through a lot of hard experiments early on, life will throw problems your way later on. And have you built the resilience and the agility to deal with them? And so it's interesting. I've asked this question about, would you work for an entrepreneurial venture or a big company, many times. And I would say the answers are split in half at this
I see.
stage.
I see. Split in
A
half.
lot of people who work in big companies say, no, if I go back, I'd definitely do something entrepreneurial because...
No, but because they haven't done that. If
Because-
because they haven't done that. Trust me. I think, no, they're making the right choice by going to the big organization because the learning curve is huge.
Yeah.
The learning curve is exponentially growing if you stay and learn, and then you can apply and leverage your experience elsewhere. I'll give you an example of why, even though your friend or the person that you were meeting managed to establish his own business and now it's worth multi-million-dollar business,
Billion.
billions, even billions. If you're playing soccer today, and you're attacking, and you have the ball, and you're maneuvering, okay. So you went through the defense, and then you took a very hard route. You maneuvered,
Yeah.
and then you you shot the ball, and then you scored the goal.
Yeah. And now I hear Khalid al-Harban in the background, go,
Goal!
for about 15 minutes.
But imagine yourself, scenario 2, you have the ball and your friend is standing near the goal here. Okay, but you choose not to give him. But did you make the right choice today by going through the defense and scoring? Or you would have given your friend who's near the goal and maybe he would have scored as well. You did not make the right choice. You did achieve your target, but you took the really hard route here. You could have taken an easy route and achieved the same target.
Yeah, the outcomes, the ends don't justify the means.
The ends don't justify the means. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes. So it depends, but if you want to do it right, I think learn the skills, learn the tools, and then go elsewhere.
Yeah. I also, several years back, there was an American organization that was looking at fast growth entrepreneurial companies in the developing world. And they found that most of the successful ones actually had founders who had gone to leading institutions in the US, who had then worked for very large US companies. So they had seen what companies at scale look like. So the exposure was, I've seen a very developed market with companies operating systematically at scale. And then they were able to come to the developing world and apply those learnings.
I see.
And build really big companies. And I think that sort of supports your statement, which is even if you want to do something entrepreneurial, at least get some big company experience, because that big company experience will expose you to systems that work.
Exactly. Even if a rich father would like to prepare his son to take over, he shouldn't bring his son to his business and let him manage. I would say throw him elsewhere. Let him find his way. Let him struggle. And then after a couple of years, bring him to the business.
What I've got a bunch of things I'd like to tackle with you, but I'm going to let me go a bit about the route of technology a bit. So I think, the question everyone's asking themselves is, how would AI change our jobs, but also will there be jobs? And I know the very optimistic answer is it will elevate our jobs, not replace them. But candidly, I'm speaking to a ton of CEOs who keep on saying, I'm wondering why I still have employees doing what they were doing, because so much of that is going the route of technology. So I think, what's your sense of how the world is changing? Has that change started to happen in Kuwait? And are you seeing already an impact on jobs?
See, in the banks, in 2015, 16, they introduced something called ITM, which is interactive teller machine, not the typical ATM, the ITM. So when the ITM came, because it literally replaces the teller job inside the branch. So the teller job was to, withdraw, deposit, and the ITM with its features, it replaces the teller's job. So when the ITM came, people were concerned. People were asking the same questions that you're asking to me today. And they said, oh my goodness, this ITM can't replace our job, so we don't need to have tellers in the bank. And it did replace their jobs. But because banks are smart, regulated, they want to utilize their people, they reskilled their tellers and they made them into different positions and different jobs. Some of them went to multimedia. Some of them had actually became behind those ITMs, picking up the phone call from the other end.
Yeah.
Some of them became advisors. Some of them became relationship officers. So they were kept, they were retained, but they were reskilled. They were trained to do something else. So the trick here is what you intend to do with the people. Are you gonna? Do you have the capacity today to expand, to reskill your people, to teach them something new, or you will just take it easy, take the easy route, and then no, ITM replaces tellers, bye tellers.
Yeah.
It's a choice of management, I think.
Sure.
But you should always have the choice, and you should always think of how to retain the employees.
And from a recruitment perspective, to what extent have you seen AI creep into your life and to the
Ooh.
things that you do? So
I'm behind a little bit in the technology, to be honest. I did download the ChatGPT, of course, and I
Yeah.
use it occasionally, not every day. But I don't mind if people can use it. In fact, when the first ChatGPT become popular, I said to my team, the entire team, guys, let's go on a training on how to use ChatGPT better. And we went, we had this amazing 3-day course on how to use it better. And now my team is using it every day, presentations, emails. And I support that because at the end of the day, the technology is coming, is inevitable. It's coming, and we have to embrace it, whether we like it or not. So that's why, who am I to stand in the face of technology? We have to embrace it. So yeah, I support it.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm not really kind of a tech, what do you call it, tech savvy,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to learn right
But
now.
it's nothing that keeps you up at night at present. You feel that this is
No,
technology,
no,
it will happen. And
it will happen anyway. Yes. Why stress myself? It will happen anyway, and I just go with the flow.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think obviously AI is one of the first places it's entered the workplace is in HR and recruiting functions.
Oh yes, of
And
course.
every day I'm getting these news alerts, not just about the benefits of which, we as an organization are building a lot of those. So I was just in a meeting before this where a client was testing out our AI recruiting agent, where in plain language, you can say, listen, I'm looking for a Kuwaiti national graduate of Kuwait University with 5 years experience in banking. And you speak to it like a recruiter and it produces the results for you instead of you having to search. So it's actually almost to a large degree becomes like a human being. But I think the flip side challenge is, while it's a facilitator and perhaps makes things very efficient, it's already being tremendously abused. So you're seeing, and that's what you're seeing in all the news right now, is people using it to post fake job ads and do fake interviews to take money away from potential candidates. And the flip side now is you've got candidates who are using fully virtual avatars to represent them. And I don't know if you saw, there was a recent one where a woman had gone through multiple rounds with a candidate remotely, and then at some point figured something was wrong, and she said, please put your hand in front of your face. And the bot refused to do so. It found ways to delay it, because typically the hands are one of those things that the AI doesn't have, right? And so she had discovered that throughout. She had been interviewing.
Oh, I see. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but you haven't felt any of that within your context here in Kuwait. It's not. I think it's still. I guess the beauty of Kuwait is still so much is relationship based and face to face that.
Yes, correct.
You get to avoid.
Based on relationships but see, I mean, if you're free to use AI to polish, to make you shine, to make you speak better, to use the skills. But the fear here, Rabi, is that you lose your skills with time. You can polish your skills, but not to depend 100% on AI. Because if you start depending 100%, then what are your skills? With time, it will phase away. So the trick here is to manage it right and not to lose your skills.
Many years ago, one of our first hires was 25 years ago, a developer in India and we did multiple interviews over the telephone, and we loved the person, and then flew him to Dubai, got his visa, etc. And then the person was executing really terribly on the
Oh my
programming
God.
skills. And it turns out, even with that old technology, he had gotten his brother to actually interview for him.
See, yeah, exactly. So,
So-
same thing can happen in today's technology, by
Right.
the way, but instead of the brother, it's AI.
It's AI. Eventually, you're going to have to pay the price.
You have to pay the price, exactly, yes. Well, it can happen, but I mean, you will be discovered after all. I mean, if you keep depending on AI or somebody else to do your job, shortly we can find out.
If I may,
And then reputation it's at stake because, forgive me, Rabia, if you end up getting the job through these kind of things, okay, how long you can sustain this image that you've established early on, a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then you'll be let go. And then when they ask, we'll say the truth, and the reputation will be damaged over time. So this is a short-sighted people who would think like this. If you're thinking really to utilize AI, then fine. Utilize AI to polish your skills, but not to really replaces your skills.
So I'm going to go back, if I may, just I know we have little time left, but really focus on the university period. And I want to ask the question from the perspective of both the university as well as the student in the university. The world is changing so quickly. Technology is changing so quickly. What should our universities here in Kuwait be doing better? And then what should students in universities be doing differently? Because I guess when you taught at Gust,
Yes.
you know, you probably know the attitudes that the students are coming to school with.
Yeah, Generation Z.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I want to, I'm going to add a third question to that. I know it's not great practice, but let's see thematically how they
That's
come
okay.
together, which is how important do you feel university degrees are in today's world?
Ooh,
And
tough one.
and you've got great certificates. And how important is it? Is the education more important or the brand more important for your career? And does it even matter after years? Because I've heard people say, you know what, after your first job, your degree doesn't matter at all. And I've heard other people say it actually defines the rest of your life. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
See, the degree is it opens the door for the career path, and I think having the degree itself is not the benefit. The journey you go through, the relationship that you make on the way, these are the real benefit. The relationships, the journey, the challenges that you go through, not the degree itself. So these are irreplaceable, and you cannot get them elsewhere. Because as a student, the life as a student is not like the life as an employee. So you'll be missing out a lot if you don't go through the experience of studying and being part of an academic institute. Doesn't matter whether you have a degree or not. Now, if you have a degree, the question is, do you have to continue on the same degree? No, you don't. It's just a ticket. It opens the door. And I advise always the people, the fresh graduates, guys, we do not have the luxury of choosing the jobs anymore. Maybe in my father's time, but not today. So grab any job that you have and then find your way and find your passion. So the perception of I graduate as an engineer, I have to find an engineer job. No, guys, ditch that. This is an old fashioned now. Get any job. In fact, it's recommended to look for something else to follow your passion. What if the degree that you have is not within your passion? So don't say no to any job. Say yes, accept challenges, accept even a low-level job. It's okay because we don't have in the world where my father and my grandfather lived in, we don't have this luxury anymore.
Sure. Ahmad, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think, what I've learned from you today is invaluable, and I hope the listeners have. I love the adaptability that you bring to everything. I think just from the change of path from engineering onto HR, to the change in industries, to the continuous learning throughout. What you're a great example of is there's a lot of opportunity out there, and as long as you're prepared and you take things with a positive attitude, great things come your way. And I think it feels like your advice to Kuwaiti youth is similar, which is be ready, embrace the change,
Yes.
embrace the private sector. While it might seem a bit uncomfortable at the start, the long
But it's
term,
rewarding at the end.
it's rewarding at the end, and ultimately play the long game, because
Yes.
that's ultimately what we're playing. And then try and settle on, discover upfront what you like, and then go deep into it. What I felt was, when we talked about those journeys, which became hard transitions at age 50, that it felt like it physically pained you because someone had not found their true passion
Yes,
earlier
of
on.
course.
And for you, it
Of
feels
course.
like you were able to, alhamdulillah, discover that early on and then lean into it.
I was blessed, and the people should always open for coaching and mentoring, and it's not. Don't be ashamed that you seek help in early age, or seek for advice, or seek for coaching advice, for example, early age, because things can change, and it's normal. So.
Thank you so much again.
You're welcome, Rabea Habibi. Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine to be here with you today.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Allah
Thank you.
يسلمك.